Welcome back to Legal Candy. I am your host, attorney Candace Ross Colucci with the Colucci Law Group, and I'm here with my co-host, Miss MK.
Hello, everyone. Glad to be back.
Here's where we unravel the most legal concepts and all those twists and turns and deliver them to you in sweet little digestible bites. Today, we are going to be tackling one of the most heated topics right now that has to deal with President Trump's, who just got inaugurated, his executive orders, and the issues surrounding the immigration birthrights, and some of those potentially looking at, is this a constitutional issue or not? And if you are interested in knowing exactly what it means, what does it mean around what did our amendments under our Constitution allow and grant to people that were born here as far as citizenship is concerned? What is an executive order? How is he able to just sign something like that? And what are some of the legal ramifications or defenses that people may have surrounding that? So those are some of the things we're going to go over. So legal disclaimer is just to remind you that today, everything on Legal Candy is for an educational entertainment purposes only. It doesn't create an attorney-client privilege. If you have any questions, comments, or concerns, you can always reach out to us. Call our office at 727-733-9438. If we can't help you, we'll point you in a direction of someone who can. All right. Illegal aliens, immigration. It is such a hot topic that I think people get insanely personal about a lot of times. And I think the interesting thing about immigration is I think the most people I hear who are enraged by it, I don't know if they've ever been affected by it personally. It's not like, they know some type of person that has been abused by someone that may have been an illegal alien. It's not
I
like
think of my friends and people that I know.
Yeah.
And I think of being like, I can empathize and being one of those people and being terrified. But during his inauguration, Trump received his standing ovation after declaring, I believe that was the first standing ovation of his remarks, saying he would declare a national emergency at the southern border. And that's what America wants, because I think that America is terrified right now. So there's two sides to that.
Okay, so here's what I will tell you that was interesting is that since we have done immigration law and we understand it, and if I didn't know about immigration law, I would absolutely understand why people are so enraged because they don't understand what's really going on. So what the masses thinks about immigration was that Biden just allowed everybody to come in from other countries, and they just are able to stay here forever. And we were allowing criminals and rapists, and with no restrictions and all of those things.
Wasn't Kamala Harris supposed to be the head of that?
Supposed to be overseeing all of that whole entire area. So what was truly happening was, one of the most dangerous things that were happening to people who were trying to immigrate here from other countries was, you've heard about it, trying to get in through the border, how dangerous it is, the ways they get in on boats, they die during the voyage, they sneak into
drowning, getting kids. It was horrible.
Exactly. It was a very dangerous.
You could see the pictures and it looked awful.
Yeah, very dangerous of the means and methods of which people were trying to gain access into America that were illegal.
Looked really half-assed to me.
So what you really see is that during kind of Biden's reign is that I really think what they were looking at was they were going, listen, this is very dangerous and people are dying. So they really kind of said, listen, we're going to make it more of an open situation where when you're coming here illegally, we will allow you in order to come in. But what happens is when they come in, if they came in through an app, there was an app that you could actually utilize if you were an immigrant coming in. You could actually set up a time for you to meet an agent at a border location and come there illegally, and they would give you something called a notice to appear, which means it's literally a criminal citation that says you're here illegally, and you have 1 year to apply for some type of relief in order for you to stay here, like an asylum or a visa or any of those kind of things. So when people just think, oh, well, they let everybody in and all these people are here now legally and can stay. No, that's not the truth. They were
not like us
letting them
walking
in.
across the street or something,
Yes.
because that's basically what I would envision.
Yep.
You know, they could just come on in.
Yeah, well, to
And
a
it's-
degree, yes, they were definitely making it a lot easier for them to come in because they were really saying, instead of you having to get here in a dangerous way, we're okay with you coming here to make it to where it's not so dangerous, but you still have to go through the right means in order to stay here. And if you don't apply for something in 1 year and get some kind of legal status, then now you're still here legally and they can deport you.
How did all these criminals and felons and people get into this country? I think that's what people want to know. Like, what about the screening
It has always
process?
been happening. They have always been, people have come in, whether we were allowing them to come through the border
So they
more
were smarter
safely,
than the system.
or we weren't back in the day. We have always, to some degree, there has always been a slippage of some type of criminals or things like that with backgrounds that have come in. The correlation that people are saying now there's more than ever, I don't know if that's true or not. But
That's
I
what
do
was getting
think
at.
what I think was, and I get the reason why they wanted to make the borders safer for illegal entry because they had become very unsafe. I understand the motivation behind that. But I do think that it was a false sense of security when not only are you opening your borders and saying, we're going to let you walk in safely, means we're not going to shoot you when you try to get over the fence, or arrest you the minute that you get here. We're going to allow you to safely come here, but then you have to do all this stuff to try to stay here, which, by the way, someone who does immigration, it's not easy at all. It is very, very difficult to get citizenship in America, and it's only getting harder. It created a false sense of security for people who don't understand our system. Not only do we let them come over here safely, but of course we hear about all the areas where they're providing them hotels, providing them resources, food, all of that stuff.
Benefits.
I just think it creates a false sense of security for those people who are foreigners who don't understand. First of all, most of them don't know how to apply for citizenship, any of that kind of stuff. They just want to get here. So they're getting here thinking that it's okay for them to be here. And then they're going, no, you now have to do all that stuff. So I think that it was a false sense of security that was being created. People were coming here thinking that, oh, okay, so that means I can stay here, not knowing what to do and not knowing how difficult it is to actually get citizenship to stay. So I definitely can understand both people's perspectives and sides of it, but there is a misconception about during Biden's reign, they're not saying, hey, you can stay here as an illegal alien forever. No, you actually are going to have to do something in order to get some kind of citizenship or some type of legal status in order to stay here. So what Trump has ended is the safety and ease upon which it was to enter this country illegally, even though you still had to apply for some kind of citizenship within a year and try to stay or some kind of status. He's ended it to not be as easy to say, hey, yeah, you can just walk in here. No, now it's going back to, you're not allowed to just walk in here and we're not going to provide you any resources. If you're going to come here, you're going to need to apply before you come here and get some kind of status before you come, or go back to the way of you guys trying to bring on boats dangerously and jump fences, go under fences, and smuggle yourself into containers that you don't fit in and then suffocate children. It was very, very dangerous. And I think that was the motivation behind some of those changes. I mean, if people said there's political motivations, but I think that's some of the motivations for why Biden's reign was allowing them to come in to enter. But I think it posed a lot of issues because, of course, because you're not forcing. Do you think they just didn't
consider those issues prior to it? Do you think that it was just a good intentions gone wrong? Or do you think that, it was so sloppy that there had to be some political motives behind that? It just seemed like there were so many.
Yeah. I don't really know. I just think, I don't know how you could have missed the part is the reason why we don't just allow people to walk in here, this country legally, is the fact is we're supposed to be making them go through the system so we can look at their background, so we can run these checks. So one of the things that happens during the immigration process when you're trying to get into some kind of legal status is they do your biometrics, and your biometrics are literally your fingerprints and all of your background in order for us to figure out who are you, what potential crimes have you committed anywhere in the country. If we can find them, they do an intensive background check. So the fact that you're not requiring that and you're allowing people to come from other countries without any type of background check absolutely on its face is going to pose an issue that you're letting people into the country that may have a criminal record. So I don't know if it was an oversight or any of those things, but I definitely can see how it got out of control. But I think, as someone who's practicing immigration law, can tell you that it's heartbreaking for the security that it provides to these people because they think they're allowed to be here when really they're truly not. So I understand what Trump is trying to change as far as closing our borders back and not just welcoming them on, saying, hey, come in here and we're going to give you a hotel. I understand that part. Now, the controversy comes down to this whole other area about Trump's proposed executive order on birthright citizenship. Here's where the issue lies. And so the executive order from Trump that has been signed would potentially end the birthright of children that are born here to illegal aliens, immigrants, any of those kind of things that don't have a legal status that are born here. Okay, so it's to end it. The question really comes down to is that with an executive order, and this is always important, people understand how executive orders are, is that when a president takes office, he can sign these executive orders, but there can be other ways potentially that they can be fought against. So they're not just like an end all be all. So a couple of things that can happen is that if an executive order is signed, individual states can technically say, well, we're not going to follow that because it's potentially unconstitutional. So one of the defenses to an executive order not going into play is if it's potentially unconstitutional. So if it's unconstitutional, it cannot technically stand. And so then
this is going to come down to the states.
Because then that states have the right to not follow an executive order if they're now alleging that it's unconstitutional. Then it kind of goes back, and now there can be technically a question where there can be a time now that with an executive order like this, that it can come back down to potentially now, does Congress have to review it? And now there has to be a certain amount of voting one way or the other to determine, is it unconstitutional or not? So the two challenges to an executive order are, is it constitutional? And did the president have the authority to now make that order? So those are the two kind of questions that can become around
it'll go before the Supreme Court.
Yeah, it could potentially. Yeah. Well, I don't even think. So it looks like where it can actually go is that it can come back and be looked at by both of the houses. They can technically look at it, and I think they can do another voting on it to see if it really is unconstitutional or not. So the question about is it unconstitutional comes from the 14th Amendment. The 14th Amendment says, under the 14th Amendment to the Constitution, all persons born or naturalized in the United States and subject to the jurisdiction thereof are citizens of the United States and of the state wherein they reside, period. That is what part of the 14th Amendment says.
Right.
And then he goes on to say, no state shall make or enforce any law which shall abridge those privileges. So that first sentence is where this question is now going to be a major issue of if his executive order now conflicts with this constitutional right here to make his executive order unconstitutional, which means it can be unenforceable. And I understand both people's sides of the reading. I can tell you from my opinion, looking at this, here's why I believe that based on this amendment, if you are born here in America to illegal aliens, you are a citizen because it says all persons born, okay? All persons born, that would be that baby born, or naturalized. So naturalized would be an alien, an illegal immigrant who comes here, who then applies for citizenship or whatever it is and gets citizenship that's somebody who becomes naturalized in our country, okay? So those are the two different people that it talks about here. People who are born here means literally the breath you take, the first breath you're taking out of the womb is here on American soil. And the people who were not born here, but then went through the process to become legal. Those are the two people it's talking about in the United States. And they have to be subject to the jurisdiction thereof, okay? The question is, does subject to the jurisdiction thereof mean that the only way when you're born here that you now get this citizenship is if you're subject to the jurisdiction, and people are trying to argue that because the parents are not subject to it, that would mean that this child that's being born is not subject to the jurisdiction, but that's not true, because the definition of subject to the jurisdiction of means you are subject, means your body, your persons are under the jurisdiction of the United States. And even an illegal alien that's here illegally, when people come in from another country and they step foot on the United States, they are subject to the jurisdiction of the United States, whether they are legal or not. So there is nothing in that sentence that would support. Unfortunately, people are trying to say that, oh, this means that when they say subject to the jurisdiction, that if they're legal aliens, they're not subject to the jurisdiction. No. If you talk to more immigration lawyers, understand immigration law, which is really, I believe, a big disconnect with what's happening with the government and what's actually happening in the immigration world and the law.
I'm so glad that you specialize in that.
It's a big difference. Is that I'm telling you, people don't understand that when somebody illegal comes and steps foot on America, you are now subject to the jurisdiction of the United States. You actually also have, there's rights they have. You're subject to our Constitution. Like, you're subject to the rights that there's a bunch of rights you technically are entitled to. You don't just come here with nothing. You're here. You're subject to us, which also means why we can arrest you, because whether you are a citizen or not, if you come into our country, we can arrest you, which means the only way we can arrest you is if we have what? Jurisdiction. Right. Jurisdiction is created in this sense as far as where your physical body is at that point in time is what's determining, are you subject to the jurisdiction? So it means if you're born here, if you're born in the United States and subject to the jurisdiction, which subject to the jurisdiction means you are here in this country, then you are citizens of the United States.
So Trump's going to have issues with that.
He's going to have issues. Yeah. So since then, there has been individual states, I think there's 6 states that have already filed a lawsuit against Trump, and they're individually halting some of the orders that he's having about that, because they are they're making the argument that it's unconstitutional. And I do think it's up for debate. I think you're going to see people who are going to argue, there's legal scholars that are going to argue that they don't believe that this allows for illegal aliens to have children here now and then allow them to be, citizens. And I can see the other side of the arguments, but I'm telling you, based on my review of what this is and now me doing immigration laws, I can tell you that when you hear the word subject to jurisdiction, it means that when you're here, whether you're legal or not, you are subject to our jurisdiction. So this sentence clearly says, if you're born here and you're here, you're a citizen.
That's really refreshing to know, because I've been reading that on the internet and I've been, just confused about that. Do you think that, do you think about Trump and the United States of Mexico and Canada?
I guess it was just
Greenland, and he's talking to these people about it.
I really don't know. I think it's interesting that he's got such passion in order to try to get a lot of stuff done.
I thought it was neat because I haven't heard of a president just thinking of acquiring land since like Great Britain or something back in the day. Is he going to sail a ship?
Yeah, like, we're going to take it back. He's like, they're not using it. I think he was like, well, the Panama Canal, they're letting China use it. So
we'll take it.
And China's controlling it. So we're going to take it back from them. I'm just like, and how do you go about doing that? I'm just like, okay, I get it. There's a lot of things that he wants to correct. I understand it. But like when I look back at this immigration one and the birthright, what I think is sad about it is that we just know so many people. I mean, growing up, how many people have you heard when they said, my parents came here illegally and I was born here? And I think it also creates this, my heart would break for babies that are born here and don't know who they are. And I know that sounds like even more deeper than it means, but it's like that's the one thing you've always had as a human being in this world, is that what allowed you since the dawn of time to have ownership over anything and a connection to something was called your birthright. That was your birthright. Yeah. That's what connects you to a country and a flag and an accent and a language and anything, And so to think that you would now potentially take that away, I think it's a little scary to go, well, who is this baby now? and starting off your world in a question of like, who am I, and who am I subject to, and all of those things. I think it's a little scary when it did create a sense of security, and at least a brand new baby who now has a place to call home.
It's definitely an existential crisis right
Yeah.
there. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, and we've got enough of those going around. So
Yeah.
yeah, that'll be interesting. I'd like to hear Luke's take on that as well.
Exactly.
I think Luke
I think
will
it will
grow.
be, and here's what I can get on is I understand. Okay, let's being careful about what we do about at the border. I think it's beautiful. I think that it's beautiful that I believe that we would like to help other people in other countries, because when you really learn about asylum and you learn about the immigration process, I can be the first person to tell you it is severely unfair. It's not just like, hey, people always go, oh, well, if they just go through the paperwork and they just apply, and people think that's what it is. They think if you just apply for citizenship, you get
just get it.
I'm telling
It's not
you,
like
it's
that.
not that at all. And I think what really needs to be reformed is it would be really beneficial if we could go back to the actual requirements for some type of legalization in this country to be able to stay here, and change some of those requirements that make it more attainable, because it is very, very difficult to stay in this country and get legal status. And people always just think in their head that it's so easy, which is why they're so willing to look at some of these kind of reforms and go, oh, well, yeah, that's, of course, do that because it's so easy when you apply, but they're not realizing it's so difficult when you apply.
But
And
so was it difficult in Biden's administration? Because it seemed to me that they were just walking in.
that is the misconception. Is they're
you know?
walking in. They are
Yeah.
walking in, but they can't stay here legally unless they get citizenship or a legal status.
Yeah.
And it is very difficult to get legal status. So a lot of them were getting, once they were past their year mark, they didn't get legal status, or at least
They were
apply
going to the
for it.
sanctuary cities
Well,
and things
yeah,
like
they
that,
were
right?
they were up for deportation. Like there would be
Yeah.
orders to deport them and those kind of things. They'd be now here under, now they're here criminally without an actual application to stay here. So now they're all subject to potentially being deported. So that's what was happening to a lot of them. But the actual end result of once you actually apply for citizenship or a legal status, once you apply for it, that really hasn't changed all that much of how difficult it is. It has stayed very difficult. So entering this country illegally, the actual process of you stepping foot on the grounds of America as an illegal alien, that is the process that was easy with Biden to let them walk in, and now Trump has stopped that. But the aftermath of actually applying for status, that has stayed the same. You still have to apply for status, and that is still very difficult to do. So I think that education needs to be kind of more prevalent out there. Let people know that it's not that easy to do it. And there are a lot of people that get sent back to their country with legitimate stories, but for why they don't qualify under our laws in order to stay here, is really heartbreaking, because to watch these families who get denied things like an asylum claim, it's one of the most devastating things I have seen, because they're here in true fear of their life, and sometimes they don't qualify under our law to stay, even though we can admit, yeah, it's dangerous, and yes, you've been harmed, but in order to stay here under asylum claim, you have to be harmed because of certain reasons upon which we recognize as a valid reason that we want to protect. Like if somebody's harming you because of your religion, depending on how severe the harm is, you also have to show that your government either participated in the harm or has shown that they cannot or will not protect you from it. And those are very difficult things to show for most people. That's why most people lose the asylum claim. And so that's where I think the reform is that I think we should probably, once people are applying legally, we need to probably look at some of those requirements and potentially amend them to make it a little bit easier, because what people don't realize is there are a lot of judges in the immigration world where their numbers for a given year are within all of the applications that are applied for asylum, that they only grant 7% of them. They only grant 8% of them. They only grant 12% of them. Those are literally the numbers of asylums being granted per judges throughout this country. That's how low some of the
Wow.
numbers are. Some of them are 20%. There's a couple of them that are 25%, but they're very low percentages. They are not 100%. They are nowhere near 70. They are nowhere near 60. If you're applying for asylum in our country because you are in fear of your life in another country, your odds of potentially getting asylum are like a D or an F. They're really low.
Yeah.
And people don't realize that. So I do think I think a lot of reform needs to happen. But I think we may be focusing, I think now we need to also focus on the actual application process, the actual requirements for it. And my heart just breaks. My heart broke the moment that like the app was turned off after it was turned off within minutes.
And people
of
were
Trump.
They were in line, they were waiting.
There.
And
I'm like, why not give them some notice? I know that
just
I get it that it's all illegal. I understand it. Okay, we made these concepts, but like they have come here under what they thought was the government's allowing them to be here. We were allowing them to walk into United States in certain areas. We still had to apply for things, but we were allowing them to walk in here. So people were coming here under that.
There was
that
Afghanistan. There was just everything.
For then in the moment of him, they had no warning. Then all of a sudden,
what?
I just thought, I'm like, you could at least get
mothers.
You know what was sad?
Babies.
I'll tell you what was sad. I'll tell you what I think was really sad was we were willing to give TikTok an extension.
Yeah.
To continue dancing and singing and all the other stuff that they do. But
that
we gave
was a priority.
no extension. Yeah, we gave no extension or stay for the turning off on the app and the borders that were allowing, had people lined up waiting who had come there from other countries, were on their way from other countries. You don't think that it makes sense to give them 30 days or anything, just some kind of notice? Because I just don't like that. I feel like, yeah, exactly. I just don't like that. I kind of feel that there's this animosity towards immigrants. And I just don't understand where it comes from. Like, I just don't understand where this like anger sometimes I've seen from people who talk about it, where I'm just going, you know, I mean, when we do asylums, they're just like, oh, they're all liars. And I'm just like, what are you talking about?
Do you think it comes from the Truth Network and like they're eating the cats, they're eating the dogs, and that rhetoric that's been going around? You know what I mean? There's a bad slant on that now going around.
It's the way the media has literally highlighted any types of crimes that were done from an immigrant. It's just like, and I don't know what the numbers are to sit here and tell you the percentages, but what I can probably tell you is that the immigrants, as far as criminals are concerned, I don't think that is our real area.
Like Lake, that girl who was jogging. Yeah, like I can think of her. You know what I mean? And I know that, and that's just such a random statistic. But I can't think of another, you know, jogger that was killed by, you know, a white person.
Because here's what I'll tell you from my layman's perspective, as I say. If I was a criminal in another country and I decide that I'm going to leave that country and go to another country, I don't know if it's to create more crimes. I would probably think it was to clean my life up and to be like, listen, I got out real good in the other country. I'm not in jail, but I don't think it's here to just continue like murdering people here and think maybe I'll get away with it here.
I can get more,
especially since we're not known that we have a weaker judicial system.
Exactly.
Like, it's not like you're going somewhere you're like, we're into that America where, you know, they don't have no laws. You know, it's not that. That's not what's happening here. So I think it is a very false perception of the correlation people keep on making that illegal immigrants are people committing violent crimes. And I think that correlation is wrongfully placed. Are there some illegal aliens who have committed crimes? Yes, there are. Because listen, certain media are making sure they find out about them and they're making sure they put them in your face. And you think that is really the main growing area of our issues. But I can tell you that that's not really where it is. And it really is more of the media making it seem that way. So then when something like this happens, everybody's jumping up and down thinking, oh, now I can leave my doors unlocked because we secured our borders. And I'm just like, yeah, no, I'm not afraid. My fear is not coming from the immigrants that are coming from other countries. That's not where my fear is. I don't think people travel for weeks, months, go through wind, heat, blisters on their feet, animals, snake bites. I don't think they're going through all of that.
Possibilities of
Leaving their
violence
families,
and
leaving their,
just-
all of the things that happens, rape that happens along the way,
Yeah.
bringing your children, dragging your children over here. I don't think all that is all taking place because the majority of them are
because they
criminals.
want food stamps.
Yeah, or they want food.
something,
Yeah,
you know.
I don't think that that's really where it comes from.
Yeah.
But I do think that there needs to be some reform there. But I think that there is a misconception on that these people are just such horrible people when it really isn't that. When you really learn about what people are trying to do to get into this country, number one is we should be so appreciative that we are in a country where people want to come the way that they want to come here, and we really should be more humbled by that and go, God, I'm so thankful for what I have. Look what people are willing to do to get here. But I also think there should be a lot more empathy to go, okay, so many people are trying to get here because it must be so horrific of where they're coming from, because it is. Look at what we're seeing in other countries right now. What is happening everywhere else? That there should be a way for them to get here that is safe, but also is an opportunity that they actually can get here and stay here. But I do think that there is a lot of discord and just anger towards them.
Do you think that now with Trump's second presidency and with his stance on immigration that it's going to be even more difficult for people to get asylum? Do you think it's going to increase that difficulty? Do you think it's up in the, like, you don't know?
Do you know that?
I mean,
I don't think it has any, I don't think it's as the person who's in office as presidency, it really is the more preliminary stuff, but the actual applying for asylum and getting it is really per judge. So it's really politically by each of those judges. And I don't even think that they're really politically motivated. I honestly think a lot of the judges, their mindset is to protect this country in a way that they start with the answer being no. And
really?
You have to, yeah, the answer is no. And then you have to overcome this burden of you shouldn't be here and you're not going to be granted it. It is very difficult to get it. So I don't think that Trump or Biden made that part of it the ultimate end mark that hard.
Horrific.
Yeah.
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 Wow.
When you hear some of their stories, and some of them just don't qualify. Like if you are brutally, raped and harmed and beaten, and all these horrible things happen to you in your country, even potentially, even if it happens because you're a woman or it happens because of the political stance you take. If something happens, like you don't go and report it because you're afraid of retaliation for the people
and your family, and
you don't go report it, then you're missing one of the requirements of the prongs that shows that the government is unable to
that is worse
support
than
you.
Insurance.
Yeah, no, it's
that
is
like just
immigration.
Sorry,
definitely
but
worse than insurance. It definitely
is.
It's just heartbreaking because they really are truly looking just for the opportunity to be able to live in peace with the opportunities that we get every single day. And I think we need to do it with grace and empathy. And there is a lot of reform that needs to happen. I do agree.
I agree.
Yep.
I agree. I think we need to strike a balance, and
you do.
And next time we can talk more about that TikTok. I thought that was so profound what you said. And another immigrant, or I guess his parents were immigrants, Luigi.
Oh yes, they were. Mr. Luigi. Okay, so stay tuned. Please follow us, click, whatever of those things you have to do. Any comments, questions, or current concerns, please reach out to us, and we will see you next time.
On Legal Candy, thank you.